Hey everyone, it's Mark! This is my recap for Pokémon Horizons episode 106, Mega Awesome, the Unopenable Dusk Ball. This was the 1338th episode of the Pokemon anime, and it was all about Ult. So let's talk about what we learned from this episode. So we get things started inside the observation deck of the Brave Olivine, which is also Ult's room. Liko and Roy are trying to tell him to keep the place clean since it's technically a common area, but Ult doesn't see the problem. He and Roy start going back and forth, and it's all very tense, even if it is just childish bickering. Blink and you miss it, but Gimmighoul did get added to the quick shot of Dot's team in the opening, and on the other side of that, we see Ult storming off the ship with his bag. Molly sees him and asks where he's going, to which Ult replies, "Heck if I know," which I thought was pretty funny. He ends up heading to this random town, and my assumption is that we're still somewhere close to Levincia. Our focus shifts to a new character though. This guy's name is Ryu, and his partner is a Grafaiai. Ryu has kind of a strange way of speaking, and he uses the word staggering a lot, and for someone who is as immensely fascinated in linguistics such as myself, I always want to know about why the writers chose to have characters speak in certain ways, but I have such limited information given that I can't speak Japanese and am completely reliant on a fan translation. Moving on, Ryu overhears Random McGee here bragging to his friend about a strong sphere. Since this town is likely so close to Levincia, it makes sense that Exceed has already rolled out strong spheres over here. Ryu's interest is piqued by this device, mainly because he thinks powering up his Pokemon could help Grafaiai make even better paintings. Too bad though, because this kid's broke, and this kid is mega starving, and he's only just arrived in town. The boys cross paths near some Nanab berries, and this brings me to today's edition of Mark's Big and Stupid Trivia Fact of the Day. Can you tell I'm writing this script for the video at like 3 a.m.? Anyways, I had to look at the name of these berries in English, and one of the last times Nanab berries appeared in the anime was back during the Where Are You Going, Eevee miniseries from back during Sun and Moon. This was the unique introduction they did for Sandy, the Eevee that Lana caught. Anyways, in episode 4 of this miniseries, there were Nanab berries growing on trees that look just like the ones we're seeing here in Pokemon Horizons episode 106. With this new revealing evidence, I think I can now say as a certified Pokemon ecologist that Nanab berries grow best on the vines of trees that exist in temperate climates. Well, I thought I could say that, but upon further reflection, it actually looks like this image was added onto Bulbapedia on the day of this episode's release, and yeah, it is a screenshot from this episode of Horizons, but on the Nanab berry article, it was mislabeled as still being a screenshot from the Where Are You Going Eevee miniseries, which has already been corrected by the time this video got uploaded. Wow, what an incredible way to debut the fan favorite segment, Mark's Big and Stupid Trivia Fact of the Day. I'm sorry for wasting everyone's time here. Back to the episode, and these idiots fighting over the Nanab berries has drawn the attention of the guy who actually lives here, and he has his Mabosstiff activate its guard dog ability and chase the boys off his property. After escaping their certain doom, Ryu is ready to leave Ult high and dry until he sees his Grafaiai getting along really well with Ult's Sableye. Both trainers are surprised to see the two dark types being so friendly with one another, and Ryu is especially shocked, so he changes his tune and declares that he and Ult are going to be pals. Ryu explains that his Grafaiai is super picky, not just in its friends, but also in what food it eats. Since his Grafaiai only eats Nanab berries, it's only capable of producing pink paint. Despite this, Ryu loves its one-colored paintings, but he does passionately explain that it's his dream to show the world one of Grafaiai's paintings with lots of different colors. Ult comes up with the idea of having Sableye recommend new food to Grafaiai, and it's time for a scene of them walking around the forest collecting different berries. Sableye is able to get Grafaiai to try an orange berry, and at the end of the day, they crash at Ryu's totally awesome treehouse. The berries they've collected have already started taking effect as Grafaiai's finger is starting to turn blue. Ryu makes it clear that all the stuff in his room isn't just a random mess, and Ult is like, well yeah, of course, everything in here is super important. This is the tie back to the beginning of the episode when Ult tried to explain that all the junk he has in his room is important since he's been collecting it during his travels. Ryu asked if he travels with any friends, and of course Ult is like, absolutely not, no friends to speak of here. Ryu's follow-up question is if Sableye is his only Pokemon, and Ult goes into his bag to show that mysterious Dusk Ball he carries with him. There is a Pokemon inside it, but Ult doesn't actually know what Pokemon it is. He's convinced that it's mega awesome though, and that the whole world would want this powerful Pokemon. Ryu is staggered, because of course he is. He said staggered like 10 times already this episode. Ult changes the subject to Grafaiai being able to paint in 2 colors now, and Ryu explains that he'd do anything to make Grafaiai's paintings better, and we see that he's still thinking about that strong sphere. The next morning, Roy goes to check on Ult, but he quickly realizes that Ult hasn't even been there for an entire day. Liko and Dot come up to investigate, and they ask about all the random junk Ult has collected. Roy starts going, yeah, it is just random junk, before he finally considers how Ult feels and that it may not be junk after all. These are the collectibles that Ult has picked up throughout their journey, and they might actually mean a lot to him. This realization makes Roy shudder because he knows he hurt Ult's feelings. Roy decides to chase after him, and even though he has no clue where he's going, he's determined to hunt him down. Speaking of Ult, he's just woken up in Ryu's treehouse. Ryu, however, is not even there. Ult checks his bag, and wouldn't you know it, his Dusk Ball is missing. Oh boy, Ult just got robbed by his new friend. He immediately goes to chase after him, and luckily this is pretty easy to do since Grafai made a ton of pink and blue marks along the way. In town, we see an Exceed representative talking to a local shopkeeper about strong spheres. Ryu steps up and asks if he can have a strong sphere himself. He doesn't have the money to pay for it, but he's willing to trade Ult's Dusk Ball for it. Yeah, I guess he really was willing to do whatever it takes to try and help his Grafai. None other than Indy and Rubella show up to accept his offer, and they take the Dusk Ball. Ult shows up at this exact moment, yelling at the explorers to give it back. Indy hands the Dusk Ball over to Rubella, who puts it away for now, and they say that the Rising Voltacklers must be crushed. Ult's response is that he's not even a member of the Rising Voltacklers, clearly still mad at Roy and the others. The explorers' goons send out 2 different forms of Darmanitan, pumping them up with strong spheres right off the bat. Ryu can only cower behind Ult at this point, not having expected this kind of confrontation to happen. Ult tries to take the bad guys on 2v1, which goes okay at first before Sableye is inevitably overwhelmed. Ryu is frozen in fear at what he's witnessing, but his Grafai decides to step up and fight back. It fires a sludge bomb at the Darmanitan, but this is quickly countered and Grafai gets absolutely clobbered. Ryu can't believe what's just happened, but he does at least feel remorse over this whole ordeal, recognizing that it was his fault that he prioritized trying to power up Grafai over anything else. Ult is at least a little sympathetic to this, but he's still got a battle to win, so it's time to break past your max, and Sableye Mega Evolves. This power-up is enough to hold off the Darmanitan and their pink Lock Beam-induced attacks, but they maintain their unnatural aggression. Ryu is starting to see the downsides of strong spheres, and he knows Ult is in a tough spot. He yells out and asks why Ult doesn't just give up and run away, but our hero doubles down, saying that he's standing up for a friend. It's obvious why he keeps on fighting. This resonates with whatever is in Ult's Dusk Ball as we see it start to shake. Sableye continues to get overwhelmed, but this continued fight and the connection between Pokemon, trainer, and friend is enough for the Dusk Ball to start freaking out inside Rubella's pocket. She pulls it out only for the ball to immediately open, and whatever shadowy figure just emerged flies in to protect Sableye from any more danger. I think I recognize that Pokemon though, and the mystery only lasts a few seconds anyways. It's a Dragonite. I can't believe it, Ult can't believe it, the explorers can't believe it, but you better believe that this Dragonite is an absolute beast as it drills the Darmanitan with a Dragon Rush before following up with a Hyper Beam, and this nails both of them. Just like that, Ult's mysterious Pokemon has blown through 2 Pokemon powered up by strong spheres, and the explorers retreat. Ult chases after them as they escape in their Exceed truck. All Ryu can do is yell his thanks as Ult runs away. How staggering. Later, Ryu is walking through town when he encounters Roy, who is searching for Ult. They start talking, and Roy says that he and Ult are friends. Friends? Whoa, now that's staggering. Ryu points Roy in the direction that Ult ran off to, and the episode comes to a close with our painting duo happy, content, and without a care in the world at whatever dangerous mission Ult and Roy are getting themselves into. Alright, very interesting episode this week. We got to learn a lot about Ult, and I was surprised how quickly we learned the identity of the Pokemon inside his mysterious Dusk Ball. When it first exploded out of the ball, I was really surprised to see a Dragonite. However, after taking maybe 3 seconds to think about it, I'm not surprised in the slightest. We're just months away from Legends ZA releasing, and what better way to hype it up in the anime by giving one of the protagonists a Mega Dragonite. More on that later. I didn't really have any predictions for what was going to be inside Ult's Dusk Ball, like given how crazy Horizons has been with Pokemon like Galarian and Moltres showing up, I feel like nothing was off the table here. Since we don't get Pokemon movies anymore, and that was typically when mythical Pokemon would get highlighted, I did think Pecharunt was a decent guess for what could be inside Ult's Dusk Ball. The first time we had a storyline like this was way back in the original series with the infamous GS Ball, and we have it on pretty good authority at this point that Celebi was going to be inside that ball. Later, in the Best Wishes series, Iris had a kind of similar storyline carrying around a Pokeball with a powerful Excadrill inside it. Oddly enough, one of Iris's Pokemon, Dragonite, ends up being the powerful Pokemon Ult has been carrying around, and I wonder where the storyline will go from here. Now seems like as good a time as any to rate this episode, so here we go. I'm giving this episode a 7 out of 10 rating. I thought it had a good mix of action and exposition, and of course it sets up for an exciting episode up next as well. Ryu was a little bit of an odd character of the day, like he was unique and interesting, but also blatantly flawed. His devotion to his Pokemon got him and Ult into quite the mess, but at least before then, I thought Ryu was a fine enough vehicle to drive Ult's character arc forward. The more important relationship dynamic to focus on is of course Ult and Roy. For the first part of this episode, Roy acts towards Ult in the same way we have seen thus far in Horizons, but once he finally learns a new move called Empathy, he starts to change his tone and we see just how much he cares about Ult as a friend. Which is clearly quite a lot, by the way. I mean, we didn't see Liko and Dot come to save Ult after all. They really just don't care, huh? I think we'll continue to see Roy and Ult's relationship more and more as the story progresses, especially since we are still expecting some kind of deeper explanation for what went on during their travels in Kalos during the 1-year time skip. The last thing I wanted to point out about this episode was how Ult really cared about a lot of seemingly random things he kept in his room. I actually relate to this a lot. I have no interest in stuff like jewelry or trading cards or really most things that people put a high monetary value on. Personally, I assign way more value to silly little personal objects I've collected over the years, like busted up soccer cleats I've grown out of or coins from the various countries I've traveled to. I'll treasure those items and the memories I've attached to them way more than I ever will a car or any other object you can think of that people typically view as very valuable. So I relate to Ult in this way, and I like that character trait. It's mega cool. Let's talk about the preview for the next episode, which hit us with a lot of stuff. Spinel is showing up again, it looks like Hamber and Diana are teaming up, which I'm sure will be wholesome and effective, and the main focus of the episode will be Roy and Ult getting into quite the showdown at an Exceed facility. I touched on this earlier, but it looks like Ult's Dragonite will definitely Mega Evolve here, which I'm sure will be quite cool. I care less about that than I do about hopefully learning more about how Ult obtained this Dragonite and seeing what their relationship will be going forward. But yeah, on the surface, it's obvious to me that this is just Legend ZA hype, giving us Mega Dragonite in the anime for a few months before the game itself releases. Let me know all of your thoughts down in the comments below, and be sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to end things here and get back to watching the 2025 Pokemon World Championships because I can't wait to see who will take up the VGC crown this year. I'll see you guys next time.